StraighTAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is why I am not and have never been a quote-unquote content creator. Now, this one may surprise some of you. Like, Dre, you have 10 million pieces of content. You have more content than anybody I've ever seen. You put out more content than anybody I see. How are you going to say that you are not a content creator? So, first of all, let me be clear that this is an industry. I'm going to explain some things first, then I'll clarify the answer to that question. This industry, quote unquote, content creators, whoever you consider to be in that industry or whatever you consider it to be, I'm going to make clear the definition of that here today. This has become more and more popular over the last 10 years, especially. And one of the reasons is because it is very easy to get into. There are very low barriers to entry. There actually aren't any barriers to entry. As long as you have access to a data plan / Wi-Fi and you have a smartphone, you can become a content creator. And everybody who's listening to this has both. So anybody can become a content creator. And content creators, the people in that lane, are very visible to everyone else from the outside looking in. Even if you're not a consumer of content on the internet, you know when you see somebody walking around in a mall holding a phone up and it looks like they're selfieing themselves, that's probably going to become some form of content that goes on the internet. Now, everybody understands that, right? So it is very visible to everybody. Everybody can see when someone is doing some form of content. And all the applications that welcome content creators, such as YouTube, such as TikTok, such as what are other ones? LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and all the others. These applications are making it easier and easier for people to get into the game and incentivizing them to not only get in the game, but stay in the game and be as invested as possible in the game. And guess what? It's working. One of the reasons that it's working, I want to touch on this more as we get more into this episode, is because the applications, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Facebook, they make it as easy as possible for you to do everything within the ecosystem of their world and not need to leave their world to do anything that you could possibly do in quote unquote business. Period, close quote. And I am putting business in quotation marks for a specific reason that I'm going to detail here today, because that term right there, business, is exactly why I am not a content creator. When I say content creator, I mean content creator with a capital C, capital C. Content creator as a job title. Now, do I create content? Yes, I do. The same way that I box, but I'm not a boxer. The same way that I drive, but I'm not a driver, if you get what I'm saying. I run, but I'm not a runner. So when I say content creator, I'm talking about the actual title of content creator, meaning somebody who does it as like, that's your main thing. Content creation is not my main thing, even though for some of you, consuming my content is the main way that you get through to me, which is completely fine. That's done strategically. That's not by accident. But we're going to get into all of that here today. Still an introduction here. The applications, as I said, are making it as easy as possible for everybody to get in this game. And I told you all just a few episodes ago where I talked about the first 3 laws of economics. Do you remember that episode on the first 3 laws of economics? Do you remember the first 3 laws of economics? Because if you don't, you need to remind yourself. Episode 3261, law number 1, supply and demand. Law number 2, diminished marginal returns. Law number 3, there are no free lunches. And that's the one that I end up coming back to that third law more often than the other 2 put together. Because what's being dangled in front of people is the free lunch of being able to start a business with no real investment of anything, let alone not even investment of money, but investment of hardly anything of that matters. And I'm going to get into all of that here today and explaining why I'm not part of this group. And I recently explained this to you again in the episode on the laws of economics. From the outside looking in, it looks very easy. This is the reason why a lot of you all's kids who are teenagers are telling you that instead of what we told our parents when we were growing up, that we wanted to be firefighters, doctors, lawyers, and president of the United States, now our kids are telling us, oh, well, I want to be a content creator. I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. All right, this is a thing that needs to be discussed. And today I'm going to discuss it from this angle as to why I am not one of these people. Point number 1, even though many of you may think that I am. Topic once again here today is why I'm not and have never been a content creator. Number one, while I do, of course, create content. When I'm referring to the official title of people who create content as their main business, as I said in the introduction, creating content is part of what I do, and I create more of it than damn near everybody, but it is not my main business. I discussed this a lot in episode 1862. Episode 1862, which those of you who may not have been around back when I did episode 1862, I said, if you want to be a content creator or an influencer, listen to this now. I explained this in episode 1862. I warned influencers and creators about something that you should have known a long time ago, something that I said back in episode 1101. 1101 is a long time ago. Be very careful about building on land that you do not own and do not control, i.e. a social media platform. I've been talking about this for years, okay? I'm referring you to an episode that was 2,000 days ago. All right, do the math, 365 days in a year. How many years is that? Even more people have been swallowed into this matrix of creating content and building your quote unquote business on these social media platforms that you don't own. This is a bad business idea. I'm not saying don't use social media. I use social media probably just as much, if not more, than everybody listening to my voice right now. I'm not saying don't use social media. I'm saying you don't build your business on social media. When you build on land that you do not own and do not control, you are in the matrix, and the matrix controls you. Everything's good until it's not good. Again, episode number 3053, I talked about business principles for the creator economy. If you want to get into the creator space, there's nothing wrong with being in the space, but you need to understand the business principles that underlie being a creator or being any type of business owner. And many people in the creator space do not understand these principles simply because you did not have to learn these principles in order to start your business or to make your business work. Now, people from my era, you had to understand principles of business to start a business and to make your business work. As a matter of fact, no, you didn't have no principles to start a business, but to make it start working the right way, you had to figure out the principles, and you had to start engaging these principles and implementing these principles. These days, you don't even need to know the principles. Let alone do you need to understand them. Let alone do you need to implement them and engage with them consistently in order to make your business work. You ain't got to do anything. You can just jump on the app and the app tells you everything to do, and boom, you're in business. At least you think you are. Many people these days are not following these principles because they were never taught to you. Many of you were never taught these principles of business. And many of you do not understand how important they are for the future of your business, if you will even have one. And many of you have been handed this business in a box, so to speak, by social media. And you think that you have a business because you have followers and engagement on social media when you really don't. What you have is a role in someone else's business, which is TikTok's business or Instagram's business or Facebook's business. You're in their business. You don't have a business. You are in their business. And if no one ever taught you the principles and helped you understand the value of these principles and helped you understand why you need some business principle substance underlying whatever you're doing business-wise, then you would have no reason to even understand why this matters. That's the reason why I'm preaching this to you again here today. All of you are going to find out, excuse me, you creator economy folks, you're going to find this out soon enough. I'm trying to help you find it out right now, today. I'm hoping to open your eyes. All right. As I said earlier, I go to the boxing gym, but that doesn't make me a boxer. All right. I can get under the undercarriage of my car and start fixing things. That doesn't make me a mechanic. So what I mean is just because you partake in a thing does not mean that is your main occupation. So deeper into this episode, I'm going to get into even more into why content creation is not my main occupation, but this episode is not really about me. Point number 2, today's topic once again is why I'm not and have never been a content creator and never will be. Number 2, I had a conversation with a friend of mine back in 2014. Here's how the conversation went. Me and this person, I will say it was a man. We were at the time, and both still are to this day, very prominent in actually he still is. I'm not really prominent in the basketball space anymore. So this guy was in the basketball space pretty prominently, still does his thing. I see his posts every now and then. And I was all in on the basketball space at this time. One of the first and most popular basketball, influencers that we had in that first wave between when influencer first became a thing, probably around 2008 up until about 2015, in that range. That's when I was all in on basketball. And in a conversation I was having with this gentleman who was also in that lane, I realized that he, along with many other influencers or creators, they did not know the revenue breakdown with a platform such as YouTube. They didn't know the revenue breakdown, meaning when you make $1 from ad revenue on YouTube, how much of that dollar goes to you and how much of that dollar goes to YouTube? I realized in a conversation I was having with this guy that he did not know the percentages. And I also realized that a whole bunch of other influencers didn't know the percentages. And again, we were both popular at the time. He might have been getting more not engagement, but more like views and vanity metrics than I was getting. But we were both very much up there. So when I first became a YouTube partner, let me tell you how I knew the answer, but he didn't know the answer. When I first became a partner on YouTube, that's when, I don't know what YouTube calls it now, but now they just call it monetization, I guess. But back then you had to actually be invited and or you had to apply in order to be a partner on YouTube, which means now your videos can be monetized, which means you can make money off the ad revenue from every ad that runs on the videos that you publish. And at this time, between 2009, when I first became a partner, up through that, let's say from 2009 to about 2012, this is about a 3 or 4 year span, I was publishing 2, 3, 4, 5 videos a day, and they were all getting seen because that's how popular the basketball space was at that time, and it was not as much competition as there later would become. I was publishing a lot of content back then. Every video I put out was getting ad revenued and all these things at this time. And when I first became a YouTube partner, I actually printed out and read the contract. So you know when you click on the button that says I agree to the terms and conditions, you agree to the YouTube partner agreement, whatever it says. I clicked on the YouTube partner agreement link and I literally printed that thing out. It was about 20 pages long and I read through that contract. And I realized that the breakdown was 55 cents of every dollar goes to the creator and 45 cents of every dollar goes to YouTube. In other words, 55% and 45% to the creator and YouTube respectively. And okay, that's fine. Maybe you consider that to be fine. The issue I had was not the actual numbers. The percentage was not the issue. The issue was this was not negotiable. There was nowhere in there that YouTube said, hey, if you want to talk to us about a different percentage, send us an email right here or fill out this form or check this box if you want to negotiate a different number before you become a YouTube partner. It was that YouTube was not offering the option to negotiate. And that's the part that got my attention. The reason they got my attention is not because I went to YouTube and negotiated. I did not. I actually did accept the agreement, 55% to me, 45% to them. What I didn't like is that YouTube could dictate the percentage split to me, and I had no say in the situation, even if it was 80, 20, 60, 40, 90, 10, whatever. The fact that they were dictating it and not even offering me the opportunity to come back and say, well, what about this? That told me something, that even from that point back in 2009, that I could not and should not and would never depend on a social media / content platform because they had all the leverage and I had none. Now, how did I come to the conclusion that YouTube had all the leverage? Because what I just told you is exactly what happened. I printed out the YouTube partner contract, read it, and said, okay, this is what they're taking. They're not offering a negotiation, and I took it anyway. And what I figured, and any of you can let me know if you think I got this wrong, I figured that YouTube has enough people creating content on this platform and will have enough people creating content on the platform in the future that if one person like Dre Baldwin says, no, thank you, what the hell does it matter to YouTube? All right, they have scale. They got a whole bunch of creators in here already who are accepting these terms without even reading the fucking contract. So who am I? I'm going to read the contract and make a big deal of it. Okay, Dre, thank you. All right, thank you for your feedback. We don't need you. We'll move on to the next person. And this is 2009. So this is before we hit critical mass of people becoming creators. Critical mass started around 2013. That's when everybody, quote unquote, started creating content. But between 2009 and 2013, everybody was consuming, but not everybody was creating. Again, those were the years where if you knew what you were doing, you ate very well on social media in that time period. And I knew enough of what I was doing to eat well in that time. And I took the agreement with YouTube. But I didn't like the fact that any platform could simply dictate to me because they had the scale. Whether I agreed with it or not, it didn't really matter because they could just go get somebody else. If it wasn't going to be me, they could just get somebody else. And they had all the leverage. So while I would continue to use the platform, of course I did, they had all the leverage and I knew I couldn't depend on it. And I had never depended on it ever. So let me be clear to you all here. Even back in those days when I was making the YouTube videos, ad revenue from content or content creation has never been my main source of income. Whether I was playing basketball or I was selling my products online, I was never dependent on YouTube as a main source of revenue. That could be another way you could define a content creator, is that the majority of the money that they make comes from the content they create and however they make their money from it. Whether it's when I do live streams on TikTok, for example, I'll get TikTok will tell me, hey, you got these rewards from your live stream. And then every week or so, they send me money through PayPal or something like that. Oh, you got deposited this much money from your live stream revenue and whatever it is. So all the apps do something like that these days. Facebook does it. I get deposits from Facebook, from TikTok, from Instagram, from YouTube. And what's the other one? There's one other I'm forgetting. Oh, X. X does the same thing. So all these apps do it. If they have some way of monetizing yourself, they do offer you to monetize, and they do send payouts and things like that. But I've never wanted any of those to be my main source of revenue, no matter how much revenue it was, because I realized that the tenuousness of the situation. Like, I don't control this. I don't control this situation. They completely dictate it. They have more options for replacing me than I have for replacing them. And I don't want to be in this situation where I can be dictated to, and I need to accept the dictation simply because I have no other options. I never wanted to be in that situation. And again, I understood this, folks, back in 2009. And I understood that a lot of creators did not understand it because most of them didn't read their agreements. And I understand why they didn't read their agreements. So lots of people have the false idea that the content creation or whatever revenue you make from content creation must be the main thing that everybody is doing who's creating content, because they see people publishing content a lot, especially myself. And I understand why somebody would come to that conclusion, but that's the reason why I'm clarifying this. It's a very simple business model to understand. Publish a lot of content, get whatever vanity metrics, likes, comments, engagement, followers, subscribers, etc. And then with the vanity metrics, you can look at other people's stuff and see who's doing what versus who else is doing something else. This explains the assumptions that most people make. But as you know, from listening to me often enough, the way most people think about most things, especially anything that comes to business, is usually wrong. Most people, when it comes to business and money, have no idea what they're talking about, even though everybody has an opinion. So most people don't know anything about business or money, but they have many untested views and opinions that end up as assertions. And this is the reason why I'm doing this episode, to clarify some things. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why I am not and have never been a quote unquote content creator. Number 3, I have maintained this stance with entrepreneurs, especially in the content space, for at least 15 years. Here's the stance that I am talking about I have maintained. And if you have never heard me say this before, listen closely. And also keep in mind, you will hear me say this again. As an entrepreneur, you are in the business of creating exchanges. That's the business that you're in, exchanges. Meaning you give someone a product or a service and they give you money. That's the business that you're in. You give them a product or service, they give you some money, however you want to receive the money, whether they're PayPaling you, they're handing you cash, or it's a payment processor link you send them, whether they're sending you Bitcoin, Cash App, whatever it is that they're doing. That's the business that you're in. Creating content is not a way of doing business, and you do not get paid generally just for publishing content. Content creation is not a business model. Content creation is not a business model. Let me say it again. Content creation is not a business model. Content creation is something that you do that ostensibly is moving you closer to doing the thing that actually makes you money. But the content itself, you don't get paid just for creating content. When I became a partner on YouTube in 2009, they didn't pay me money just because they didn't say, Dre, publish 5 videos will give you $1, but if you publish 10 videos, it'll give you $2. And you publish 100 videos, it'll give you $20. No, that's not the way it works. They're not paying me just to publish content. They paid me based on the number of people who saw the advertisement on the videos that I published, which means the more my video got watched, the more people would see the ad, and the more likely somebody would click on something and actually buy something. All right, that's the way it works. You get paid when money is exchanged as a result of your content. You don't get paid just because content got published. Again, you publish a piece of content and nobody looks at it, then you don't make money off that. You make money when money is exchanged because of your content. And that's not the same thing. So no one platform will ever pay you just for publishing. All right, they pay you because of the results of what you publish. And what happens there is some form of exchange somewhere. So I put a video on YouTube. Nike buys ad space on my video. They run an ad for a new pair of LeBron James sneakers. Somebody clicks on that ad and buys the LeBron sneakers, or even if they don't buy them, the fact that they got that click, Nike pays Google for the fact that someone clicked on that ad, and I get 55 cents of that dollar and YouTube gets 45 cents of that dollar. You add that up over hundreds and thousands of times over the course of a month. That's how you end up with your ad revenue. That's how it works. That's the business model. And I know a lot of people are publishing, don't even know this, or they want to be publishing, they don't even understand how this stuff works. So no one platform just pays for publishing. You get paid for the results. And what happens is, again, some type of exchange must occur. So just putting a video on TikTok or YouTube is not worth money to anyone, let alone to them. Again, that's why you don't get paid just for doing that. You're in the business of creating exchanges. You are not in the business. Let me tell you what business you're not in. You content creators and would-be content creators, and those of you who are content consumers, you are not in the business of views, engagements, likes, or subscribers. This is not the business that you're in. I am not in the business of views, engagement, likes, or subscribers. I appreciate when I put something out and it gets views, engagements, likes, and subscribers, but that's not the business that I'm in. I can't go to, for example, just today on X, when I am recording this, I posted some things the day before that picked up a lot of steam. So far today on X, just today, my material has been, just my posts have been, in terms of impressions, 341,124 impressions today on X. And in the last, let's just say in the last month on X, just looking at my stats here, in the last month, 4.3 million impressions, my engagement rate 2.5%, 112,000 engagements, 26,000 profile views, 4,000 replies, 41,000 likes, 567 reposts, 1,000 bookmarks, and 29 shares over the last month on X alone. Now, what does any of that mean to me? The answer is absolutely nothing. I mean, it's cool that people are looking at my stuff, but I don't really care about any of this shit. Why? Why don't I care about any of this shit? Because I don't get paid for this. This is not how I don't make money for doing any of these things. Now, technically, X does give a payout every month, but it's not based on these numbers. It's based on the ad revenue, and the ad revenue is based on how people actually interact, if they do, with the ads that go into my replies. It's not just because you got a bunch of people, like, for example, somebody could have 1 million impressions on X and I could have 100,000, and I could make more money than they did from ad revenue simply because of the way people interacted with the ads that got shown on under my post, as opposed to how people interacted with the ads shown under their posts. There's another thing that people get wrong. They don't even understand the business models of these companies. They don't even understand how advertising works. So I saw somebody post the other day, like, yeah, I got to pay out on X of $250. I got to step my game up, or it might have been $2,500, something like that they said. I got to step it up. What can I say to draw more attention? They were kind of being tongue in cheek. But what these people don't quite understand is the business. I don't know if this person does understand. Maybe they do. I think they probably do. But a lot of people don't, which is, it's not just the number of people who see your stuff that determines how much you get. Generally, that is how it works, because the more people see your stuff, the more possible clicks you're going to get. And generally, it ends up working out that way, but it doesn't always work out that way. It's kind of like if we both go to the mall and you approach 20 girls, and let's say you're a male, you approach 20 girls and ask them for their phone number, and I only approach 3 girls and ask them for their phone number. Is it likely that you'll probably get more phone numbers than I do because you approach 20 and I approach 3? Yes, but does it guarantee that that's going to happen? The answer is no, because I might go 3 for 3, or you might go 1 for 20. I got 3, you got 1, even though you tried more than I did. So it depends on many other factors besides just how many times that people see your stuff. It also depends on what kind of ads are running, what kind of people are looking at your stuff anyway to even be exposed to the ad, and what happens if and when people do click on the ad. All of those things factor in. The point being, the content publishing alone is not the business. And as I've been telling all of you for a decade, you are in the business of exchanges, not views, engagement, likes, or subscribers. I've been telling all of you this for a really long time. All right, the show's been out for a while. I've been telling y'all this for a long time, but people are still falling into this trap. If you are going through a middleman to make your exchanges, the middleman owns you. If you are going through a middleman to make your exchanges, the middleman owns you. How does the middleman own you? Because if something happens with that middleman or your relationship with that middleman, do you have another way of making your exchanges? Do you have a way of making your exchanges without a middleman? If so, your business should be based around, how the hell do I do all of my exchanges without the middleman? You should be asking yourself that question and coming up with an answer. If you don't have an answer, or there is no answer, all right, you are owned by whoever that middleman is. In short, what does this mean? If you are a TikToker and you got a bunch of followers on TikTok and you're making money on TikTok, you're selling your products and whatever it is you're doing on TikTok is making you money, and you got 100,000 followers on TikTok, understand something. If anything happens to TikTok or anything happens to your account on TikTok, how are you going to access your 100,000 subscribers, and how are you going to keep making money? Let's say somebody hacks your account and deletes your account. How are you going to keep making money? Well, the answer is you won't make money because you have no access to your fans. I thought they were yours. If something happens to your account, how do your fans go away? How does that make any sense? Something happens to my Instagram account, my audience doesn't go away. It's just my access to the people who are following me on Instagram goes away because now I don't have my account anymore. This is the issue. So social media is a middleman, ladies and gentlemen. Every social media platform is a middleman. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, TikTok, Twitter, all of them are middlemen. What I mean by middlemen is that the only way you can access your audience on any of these platforms is to go through the platform itself. You can't access your Facebook followers by just clicking on anything other than Facebook. There's no other way to access those people. So again, are they yours? The answer is no, they're not yours. You are on borrowed land and on borrowed time when it comes to social media. Anytime you're going through a middleman, you're in a precarious position because if you ever lose your relationship with that middleman or that middleman simply disappears, what are you going to do? Again, how many times have I told you all this? If it's your first time hearing it, understand it ain't my first time saying it. So be very careful if you're going to get into the creator space. Be a creator, do that, but you must move your audience from the platform upon which they have heard of you to a platform which you have full control and ownership over. Social media is not that platform, unless you happen to be Mark Zuckerberg and you have full control and ownership. Everybody else, you got to get them off that platform. And they know this. That's why when I put these type of messages out, they often don't get engagement, views, subscribers, and likes because the platforms don't like me saying this stuff because it's very true. Let's recap today's class, which is why have never been a content creator. Number one, of course I create content, but what I'm referring to here is the official title of people who create content is their main business. Creating content is part of what I do, but it's not the main thing that I do. I use content to move people to the main things that I do. Number two, I had a conversation with a friend of mine back in 2014, and I realized that he had not read his agreement. And I realized a bunch of other creators had not read their agreement, and I knew what that agreement said, which was YouTube was getting a certain percentage of the ad revenue that came in. I didn't like how much they were getting, but I also knew that another thing I didn't like, YouTube kind of dictated the terms of engagement, and they didn't really have to negotiate with us because they could easily replace any one of us with the next one of us that came along. And that's when I decided very early in the game, I can't base my business around this because I don't control it. I don't have a say, and YouTube can dictate to me or change the terms on me anytime that they feel like it. And I didn't like being in that situation. So that's how I knew that I could not be a lifetime content creator, even though at that time I was already starting to sell my own products and services anyway. Number three, I've maintained with entrepreneurs, especially in the content space, that you are in the business of exchanges, not likes, followers, views, subscribers, or any other vanity metric. Unfortunately, many creators are falling into this vortex of going after vanity metrics, and people from the outside looking in tend to look at people based on their vanity metrics. Somebody who disagrees with me will say, well, your post didn't get a whole lot of likes, as if that matters. So ask me how many sales we got in our merchant processor today. That's the question you should be asking, not how many likes you got on your post. I don't give a fuck about likes. Again, you can't pay bills with likes. All right, so what business are you in, ladies and gentlemen? Please wake up. In case any of you didn't know, now you know. All this said, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me as your direct coach so we can get to work on you doing the real things that matter in your real business. And dreallday.com/AI. So you can talk to my live Dre GPT 1.0 AI chatbot. Talk to it the same way you would talk to me, 24/7, always available completely for free. That's at dreallday.com/AI. The links to everything I just told you about down in the description to this episode. Work on your game. Dre all day.